time on our first date?
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. And Squatter's beer. I've never tried that before.
It's pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Good thing glass is so easy to make.
Yeah, that's right. Cheers to that.
Alright, sorry to break up your date, guys, but you don't seem to know anything about glass bottles. Hi, I'm Landon Gus, and I'm here to tell you the truth about glass bottles. Can either of you tell me where a glass bottle comes from?
Walmart?
Close. Excuse me. So, glass bottles are actually made from a wide variety of materials extracted all over the earth. Soda ash is raw ore, which is crushed and then screened and dissolved in water. It's then filtered, and what is left is a fine powder, which makes up about 13% of a glass bottle. So soda ash also reduces the furnace temperature, which is required to melt the other raw materials of the glass. But in the process, it also weakens the structural integrity of the bottle. There's also dolomite, which is a much more affordable form of limestone. It's used to help reinforce the glass bottle after it's gone through the furnace process. It only makes up about 4% of the product. There's also collet. Collet is ground up and recycled glass, which is used to lower the amount of energy used to make new glass bottles. It also reduces the environmental impacts of making a glass bottle.
Well, that was weird.
Yeah, should we go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank God we got away from that weirdo.
Yeah. I thought it would be fun to make sandcastles on our date.
Yeah.
But this sand's a little hard. It's a lot easier at the beach. Rip.
Well, finally, there's silica sand, which makes up about 73% of the finished product. It acts as the primary component in determining the color, clarity, and strength of a glass bottle.
Cool story, bro. But can we just continue with our date, please?
You know what? I'm being so rude. Please do.
All right. So sorry about that, guy. That was really weird. Is it okay if we continue our date with a walk?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect.
I actually just read a news article this morning about silica sand. Can I share it with you?
Yeah, if you want.
Okay, so... It was a little after 11 a.m. on July 31st, 2013. The sun beating down on a low, modest residential building lining a back street in the Indian farming village of Raipur Khadar. Faint smells of cooking spices, dust, and sewage seasoned the air. The men stopped their bike in front of the orange door of a 2-story brick-and-plaster house. 2 of them dismounted, eased open the unlocked door, and slipped into the darkened bedroom on the other side. Gunshots thundered through the house. Preeti Kahan, Palaram's daughter-in-law, rushed into Palaram's room. Ravindra was right behind her. Through the door, they saw the killers jump back on their bike and roar away. Palaram lay on his bed, blood bubbling out of his stomach, neck, and head. He was trying to speak, but he couldn't, Preeti says, her voice breaking with tears. Ravindra borrowed a neighbor's car and rushed his father to the hospital, but it was too late. Palaram was dead on arrival. Despite the masks, the family had no doubt about who was behind the killing. For 10 years, Palaram had been campaigning to get local authorities to shut down a powerful gang of criminals headquartered in Raipur Khadar. The mafia, as people called them, had for years been robbing the village of a coveted natural resource, one of the most sought-after commodities of the 21st century.
It's sand.
How did you know I was talking about sand?
How did you know we were here?
Well, what I was trying to tell you guys
Okay,
is
you know what? I'm done. I'm sick of hearing about stupid glass bottles. Of the 3 dates I've been on in my entire life, this is by far the worst one. I'm leaving.
You just got stood up. What I was trying to tell you is that sand extraction is a $70 billion industry.
Oh my gosh.
No, listen, here. So, the industry involves issues like illegal extraction, environmental ramifications, there's sand mafias, and opportunities for taxes and legislation. So sand mining started on land, but once kicked up dust started to stunt crop growth in land quarries and the riverbeds became tapped out, the miners had to move out to the oceans. Now you can find thousands of ships backing up huge amounts of sediment from the ocean floors. And in doing so, they've caused huge issues in rivers, deltas, and marine ecosystems. Sand extraction in the United States alone has caused beach erosion and major water and air pollution all along the California coast and the Great Lakes.
I've actually heard about some outside the United States too.
2 dozen, I think it's 2 dozen Indonesian islands have been erased since 2005.
Completely gone. And these environmental impacts are leading to regulations and new laws in a lot of places. But unfortunately, illegal sand extraction is getting more and more common as permits to do sand extraction are getting increasingly more expensive. So unfortunately, 70% of sand miners don't even have their permits. And the environmental impacts we've been talking about are most prevalent in India, while sand mafias are present in at least a dozen countries such as Nigeria and Jamaica. Now, these sand mafias, they extract tons of sand to sell in the black market, and in the process, they're terrorizing neighborhoods and families, like the one in your story.
Well, unfortunately, the killings that happened in the story aren't the first or the last. So in 2010, dozens of Malaysian officials were actually charged for accepting bribes and sexual favors in return for allowing illegally mined sand to be smuggled into Singapore. But for the officials that actually tried to raid these sand mines, they're often attacked and shot at.
Well, and it's so important to keep in mind that all of that is happening before the bottle's even been made.
This is really starting to stress me out. I'm gonna actually go do some yoga.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess, well, okay, we'll talk later. Well, Michael!
Not this guy again.
Michael, man, what's got you so down in the dumps?
I don't know, man. Maybe the fact that you just ruined my first kiss with Morgan. And it was all for stupid glass bottles.
That's right, glass bottles. Let's get back to that. So, are you aware of the major environmental impacts that glass melting has on the environment? The burning of fuel during this process puts tons of CO2 out into the air. And you might be asking, what's the big deal with CO2?
No, not really.
That's perfect, man. So sulfur dioxide from the fuel and the decomposition of sulfate can lead to the acidification and the formation of smog. And nitrogen oxides, due to the high melting temperature and the decomposition of nitrogen compounds, all contribute to the acidification of smog as well, while the evaporation of molten glass releases additional particles into the atmosphere.
Well, why can't we just clean it up?
Well, unfortunately, efforts to reduce CO2 emissions are actually pretty complex. There are some suggestions like switching from a heavy fuel to a natural gas in the furnaces though.
Bro, why don't you just do that? Like, just switch the furnace off and switch.
Sorry, champ, but it's really not that simple.
I wish this weren't so complex. I would prefer a simple solution to
I
this.
think we all would, honestly.
But, you know, I'm done. I'm gonna leave.
Oh, well, what I was trying to say is that, so these glass furnaces, they run for 15 to 18 years, and they can't be turned off or, like, cooled down without costing the companies a fortune. So, unfortunately, this means that a lot of the new furnace technologies can't or won't be installed until a full furnace rebuild.
Bro.
Percent of China's mainland glass. Only one of the 18 production facilities even had the proper filtration systems. Their nitrogen dioxide emission levels were above the standard limit for a long time, and they falsified so much emission data that they were eventually placed on the government's watch list. So in 2002, the Chinese government told Foreign that they needed to switch to natural gas. Foreign refused, claiming it would be far too expensive. This came from their brokerage firm, which said it would cost an approximate $80 million to install the new equipment, plus an additional $30 million each year just to operate it.
So what, we're just screwed?
Oh no, it gets a lot worse. In 2008, the company switched to an even dirtier form of oil, but they finally started getting fined when the new Chinese Emissions Act came into law. So the company was investigated, and their sulfur dioxide levels were 2.5 times the standard level, and their nitrogen dioxide levels were 40% higher than the allowable level. The Chinese government gave Foreign 1 month to come up with an action plan to reduce emissions and 6 months to implement it. But by 2013, nothing had changed, and Foreign fell victim to harsher emissions laws and was forced to go out of business, costing 4,000 jobs.
Does this look familiar? Yeah, I was walking out of yoga and I saw this littered on the ground. It's kind of weird that you do that after telling us all about the life of a glass bottle. Think this is yours?
Yeah, that's so embarrassing. I'm such a hypocrite. I don't even deserve to be telling you about glass bottles. This is up to you now.
Michael!
Hey.
Hey, I've been doing some thinking.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and, you know, I think that
Wait, what is it?
Americans waste 425 glass bottles per capita per year. That's twice the amount that we recycle.
You've got to be kidding me.
No, and get this. It equates to an energy consumption of 36 million barrels of oil, 4.5 million tons of greenhouse gases, and 136 glass bottles per person per year. But to put this in perspective, the energy used to replace 134 billion glass containers wasted in 2005 was equivalent to 50 million barrels of crude oil per year. That's enough energy. That's enough to supply energy to 2 million households per year. But Michael, all of this heat creates extensive energy, which contributes to the greenhouse gas emission. But some experts say that this could be as much as 2 tons of CO2 for every 1 ton of glass.
Wow.
I know, and when glass bottles are wasted, they must be replaced with new bottles made from virgin materials. Production using virgin materials is more energy intensive than production using cullet. It generates more pollutants and leads to a lot of social and economic issues that Landon mentioned earlier. Also, shattered glass bottles are extremely dangerous, as glass shards are difficult to clean up. Beverage containers often comprised of 40 to 60% of roadside litter.
So this affects pedestrians, livestock, and marine wildlife.
So, is there any good news to glass bottles?
Actually, yeah, kind of there is.
Can you just leave us alone for like 5 minutes?
Yeah, man, you're kind of freaking us out.
Right, well, you see, glass bottles are incredibly self-sustainable because they're made from raw materials, which is very helpful for the Earth in mitigating climate change.
Do you want to go? Let's go.
So as I mentioned earlier, cullet is ground up glass which can be used to make new glass products over and over again, but especially glass bottles. In fact, glass bottles have a recycling rate of between 50 to 80%, meaning less raw materials such as silicon sand are used to make the product. So using less raw materials also reduces the amount of social issues in the supply chain, such as those in India we discussed earlier. Unfortunately, glass, which can be recycled and back on the shelf in 30 days, just isn't being recycled. In fact, in 2013, only 34% of glass bottles in the United States were even recycled. Cities such as Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Charleston, West Virginia are finding it far more cost-effective to just have their citizens throw their glass bottles in the trash rather than the recycling bin. It's not because people don't want to recycle, it's just that they're recycling in a very ineffective and inefficient way. So when the United States started allowing its citizens to throw their glass bottles in with the rest of their trash, glass recycling facilities stopped getting shipments of glass bottles intact, but started getting shipments of glass bottles in shards. Those shards are extremely difficult to sort out from the rest of the recyclables. Take the largest glass recycling facility in the United States, for example, whose vice president said that 20 years ago, they were getting shipments of 98% glass and 2% garbage, but now they're getting shipments of 50% garbage. In his words, what comes with the glass is rocks, shredded paper, chicken bones from people's takeout containers, and hypodermic needles. All of this has to be sorted out by new and expensive machinery, which is making glass recycling less and less profitable. But why take my word for it when you can have that of a complete strangers, such as Nate from the USC Recycling Center?
Unfortunately, the value of glass and this kind of stuff is very, very little. There's not a lot of value in it, you know.
There you go. So in order to make up for the installment costs of this new machinery, a lot of recycling plants are having to charge $10 to $40 just to accept a truckload of glass. But even then, a lot of them are simply turning away truckloads of glass because of contamination. So with the difficulties of modern glass recycling, it shouldn't have come as a surprise to the city of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, when their government announced that the people would either need to take their glass to a central location or just throw it away in the garbage. But the people of that city spoke out in anger. So it just goes to show that the issue isn't that people don't want to recycle. Well, you see, actually the issue is that people just don't want to pay for it.
Bro, what are you even talking about?
I'm talking about glass recycling.
I just throw my glass bottles in the garbage. Big whoop.
Actually, you see, it is a big whoop. It's a real big whoop. Because last year, the United States people threw away 289 million tons of solid waste. That's a lot of stuff to put in a landfill. But luckily, you don't need a permit to dump solid waste once you're 12 miles off a U.S. coast. That comes directly from the Marine Research Protection and Sanctuary Act 33. And once a glass bottle's in the ocean, it takes 1,000,000 years to decompose. 1,000,000 years.
Fine, I'll just throw my glass bottles on the side of the road. Will that make you happy?
No, and it won't make the small mammals you'll be killing happy either. Well, Michael, a study that was done in 2015 looked at 2,997 containers, 85% of which were glass bottles found in the Cherokee National Forest Road. But what they found inside of the bottles was truly disturbing. 510 remains of mice, lemmings, and shrews were found inside these glass bottles. That comes out to be about 1 in every 5 glass bottles. And that's only one national park. So Michael, just imagine how many animals are dying in the United States and in the world because you're too lazy to find a recycling bin.
And that's kind of all we really have to say about glass bottles. So I don't know. Do you want to go get a drink?
No, I've actually learned a lot today, and I think I'm gonna take this glass bottle to the USU Recycling Center. Come on, guys.
Do you want to go get a drink?
Yeah.
Sweet.